And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, April 2nd. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to talk about Steph Curry and his performance last night, hitting 12 three-pointers and scoring 52 points in the Warriors' win over the Grizzlies. And we'll talk about, where they stack up against the other playoff teams in the Western Conference. Then in the second part of the show, we will get into discussing John Harbaugh. So this happened last week, but I didn't cover it. We'll talk about him getting a 3-year contract extension with the Ravens, and we'll talk about whether that's a good move or not. So he will continue to be the Ravens head coach for the foreseeable future. I know some Ravens fans have a different opinion. I know that, but I wanted to talk about that as well. We'll also get into talking about the Braves. They've gotten off to a rough start, and they've also had a player, a newly acquired player, a player that they signed in the offseason, Jurickson, Profar. He was suspended for 80 games for PED use. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the possibility of Brian Snitker, their manager. I almost said head coach because I'm so used to talking about football. Manager, maybe not continuing to manage the team beyond 2025. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about the top revenge games in the NFL going into next season. The schedule has not come out yet, but we know the opponents for everybody. So we'll talk about the best revenge games for next year. And then in the final part of the show, I will continue my season overviews. And today we will be covering the Houston Texans. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing Steph Curry and his performance last night. And it's one of those things that, it doesn't really, shouldn't say it doesn't impress you, but we've seen this so many times with him, and it does. You know what it is? It doesn't surprise us. It doesn't surprise us what Steph Curry is able to do. And it's good to see him back on the court because, obviously there was that scary situation, last week or a week and a half ago when, you had the incident where he fell, landed on his backside and, he missed some games due to that. But, he's back and, he is going to be the driving force for the Warriors as we get into the playoffs. If the Warriors are going to make a deep playoff run, now they have played really well since they got Jimmy Butler, but let's be honest, they're not making a deep playoff run if they don't have Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the engine. Now, we talked about playoff Jimmy in our production meeting, and the thing is we really haven't gotten to see playoff Jimmy because, he also got hurt during one of the playing games when Miami recently made the playoffs. Well, and I think that was two. Was that last year or was that 2 years ago? Either way, we haven't gotten to see the playoff Jimmy that we saw when he took the Heat to the finals. So if we can get playoff Jimmy and if we can get playoff Steph, the Warriors are going to be a very dangerous team. And Draymond Green, of course, you have him too. And, he's more so a guy, that we look at as helping out on the defensive side of the ball. But obviously he does have big nights scoring-wise at times. But it's Steph Curry. And Steph Curry just continues to amaze us with what he's done over the course of his career. And, look, I don't look at the Warriors as being a team that can get to the finals, but they have that championship pedigree, right? They have that experience, and you have to give them that respect. I definitely think they're a team that can make it, at least to the second round, and then you roll the dice and see what happens. But I still don't think they have quite enough to get to the finals. Because in years past, when the Warriors have gotten to the finals, well, first of all, they had superstars all over the place. I mean, you had Prime Clay, you had obviously Kevin Durant, right? But the team is not, and they also had a pretty good bench back in the day too. I don't think they have quite as deep a team as they have had. So, we'll have to see how it goes. But this was a big game last night, because the Warriors are going up against a team that, is right now ahead of them in the Memphis Grizzlies, who actually, let go of their head coach. And we did talk about that in our production meeting as well, which, is kind of an interesting move just because, we're towards the end of the season here and the Grizzlies are a playoff team. They're going to be a team that makes the postseason. So it's kind of odd seeing that go down. So, I mean, they didn't like how they were performing as of late. And that continued last night, even after the move. Yeah, because right now, Warriors are a half game behind the Grizzlies. But, yeah, so Steph Curry last night, we'll get into the Western Conference standings, but looking at Curry's night, he had a double-double, 10 rebounds, close to getting a triple-double. He had 8 assists last night. 52 points, went 16 of 31, 12 of 20 from 3, 8 for 8 on free throws. Warriors actually did not miss free throws last night. And that is key in the game because they only ended up winning by 9 points. But they made all their free throws, so that was very important. They shot 22 of 56 from 3, 42 of... Wow, they took 99 shots last night. So, they shot 42% last night. Grizzlies shot 47%. The Warriors out-rebounded them. Defensively, actually, the Grizzlies, defensive rebounds, they out-rebounded the Warriors. But, yeah, Warriors picked up a big win. 27 points from Jimmy Butler, speaking of. Moses Moody had 10. Draymond Green had 13. He actually had a triple-double. He had 13 rebounds, or 13 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists. And he did get contributions from guys off the bench. For the Grizzlies, John Morant, 36 points on the night. Desmond Bane had 19. Zach Edey had 10. He also had 16 rebounds. Jaren Jackson, he had 22 points. So, yeah, good game last night, though. And, some other games as well. You actually had the Nuggets and the Timberwolves going to double overtime. Timberwolves ended up winning that game 140 to 139. That was one of the better games. That was probably the best game from last night. But looking at the standings, so right now the Warriors are the 5th seed, and actually they are ahead of the Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies are half a game behind. I might have said the Warriors are half a game behind, but the Warriors are half a game ahead of the Grizzlies now, and this potentially sets up a 4 versus 5 matchup in the first round between LeBron James and Steph Curry. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see them play against each other possibly later in the playoffs. But, look, if we get that in the first round, you'll take it. Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry, the Warriors newly acquired Jimmy Butler against, LeBron with newly acquired Luka Doncic. So, you'll take that. The Lakers right now are a half game behind the Nuggets, so it's possible they could pass the Nuggets. But it's pretty close in the Western Conference. And then you got the Rockets in second, and then, the Thunder, they, of course, they're the number 1 seed. That's how it's going to end. Nobody's catching up to them. But they have, they're actually the only team right now that has clinched a playoff spot in the Western Conference. And then you look over at the Eastern Conference side, the Cavs, the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Pacers, they have all clinched playoff spots as well. The Knicks picked up a win last night. They knocked off the 76ers. They'll be playing the Cavs tonight in Cleveland. With no Jalen Brunson, so don't like their chances in that game. But actually, the Celtics have won 9 in a row. They're 4 games back of the Cavs, so there's, an outside chance they they could still maybe catch up to them and pass them for the number 1 seed, but I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, no, other than the Thunder, nobody else has clinched a playoff spot yet, but we'll start seeing that, as we move along here. But let me know what you guys think though about Steph Curry's performance last night. How far do you think the Warriors can go in the playoffs? Look, like I said, you got to give them that respect. They could definitely make a run, but I feel like this is one of those years where that might not happen. But hey, if playoff Jimmy shows up and you got Steph Curry, you never know. Now, Steph Curry, one last thing I wanted to bring up, he became the 3rd player in NBA history with 50 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists, and 5 steals in a game, and he joins Rick Barry and Anthony Davis. He scored 32 points in the first half, shooting 8 of 10 from three-point range, and he tied LeBron James for the 3rd most 30-point halves since the 97-98 season. He recorded a 6th game with at least 8 3-pointers and a half, the most ever. First ballot Hall of Famer. But yeah, we're winding down here. Let's see if the Warriors can go on a run in this postseason. So we are going to take our first break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will talk about John Harbaugh receiving a contract extension from the Ravens. We'll talk about if that's a good move or not. I'll give you my thoughts. So that is what we will do when we come back from our first break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about John Harbaugh, the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, receiving a 3-year contract extension, and we will talk about, if that's a good move or not. And, he's been with the Ravens since, I think he's been the head coach since 2008. He's been there a long time. He's one of the longest tenured head coaches, left in the NFL. You got him and Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. But this 3-year extension, so he was set to enter the 2025 season on the final year of his current deal, and the Ravens tacked on 3 more years. So this will take him through the 2028 season. So he's not going anywhere. And, it wasn't looking good. I would say it wasn't looking good for him around, between the 2015 and the 2017 season. Because, 2015, the Ravens got ravaged by injuries, right? I mean, everybody got hurt. On defense, Flacco got hurt as well. 2016, they just missed out on the playoffs. Same thing with 2017, right? 2016, Antonio Brown, reached over the goal line, basically knocked the Ravens out of winning the division. They ended up missing the playoffs. And then 2017, looked like they were going to make it, and then Andy Dalton on 4th and 12 hit Tyler Boyd for the touchdown, and that sent the Bills to the playoffs. So 2018 was a crucial year for him, and then Lamar Jackson stepped in. Flacco gets hurt, Lamar Jackson comes in, and, we know the rest of the story there. The Ravens have pretty much made the playoffs every single year. The only time they've really missed in the Lamar Jackson era was 2021. And that was because Lamar Jackson got hurt. So Harbaugh's career record, I think this is what it is, but it's been there since 2008, like I said. He has a 172 and 104 record, which is very good. He led the Ravens to their Super Bowl 47 victory over the 49ers. That was back in 2013. Yes, he is the second longest tenured NFL head coach besides Mike Tomlin. And a lot of changes have been made over the years. They've gone through 7 offensive coordinators, 7 defensive coordinators during his tenure. 5 former coordinators and 4 other assistants have gone on to become NFL head coaches. I mean, most recently had Mike McDonald with the Seahawks now. And the Ravens are coming off of a good year. I know they got knocked out in the second round, but, Lamar Jackson, he was up there once again for MVP. They got to the divisional round, and they had a chance to win it if it wasn't for turnovers and missed opportunities. But you also had 11 Pro Bowlers on this squad. And the offense was very good. Bringing in Derrick Henry was a smart move, and like I said, Lamar Jackson once again up there for MVP. But I know there are some Ravens fans that aren't happy about this because they want to see this team go far. You have Lamar Jackson, who's an MVP candidate every year. The defense is usually good, although it did struggle last season against the pass. Against the run, they were very good, but against the pass, they struggled. But this team always seems to come up short. And I think that's where Ravens fans are saying, hey, we want change. We don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I understand that. Because, yeah, they've made the playoffs basically every year. But, since Lamar Jackson became the starter, 2018, they were one and done. 2019, they were one and done. 2020, they did win a playoff game against the Titans, who knocked them out the previous season. But then they lost to the Bills. 2021, they didn't make it. 2022, they got knocked out in the first round. You had Tyler Huntley starting. You lost to Joe Burrow and the Bengals, which you actually could have won that game. Had an opportunity to do that. 2023, you make it all the way to the championship game, and then you end up losing to the Chiefs. And then last year, you lose to the Bills again in Buffalo. So it's one of those things where you're like, when are the Ravens going to break through? Because they have the talent, but is it more than just that? Is the coaching. And I think when you look at the championship game when they played against the Chiefs, right? The Ravens abandoned the run very early on in that game. They only ran the ball 6 times. People blame Harbaugh for that. Like, why are they not running the ball? The Ravens' defense, which was better in 2023 than it was in 2024, they kept the Ravens in that game. And maybe they should have committed to the run more. And I feel like it was kind of a similar thing with the divisional round against the Bills. But then again, that was a bigger deficit. The Chiefs, that game was close throughout. The Ravens, they didn't pull off anything, but they closed the gap in the second half. Derrick Henry really didn't have any big plays in that game. Did have a big drop early on in the game, but still, it's things like that people complain about. I think John Harbaugh is a very good coach. If I was an NFL team that, is looking for stability and has kind of been going through different head coaches constantly, that's a guy immediately take. This guy is still a very good head coach. It's just, you have a team like the Ravens that have high expectations, and this is a team that hasn't been able to break through. Similar to the Bills, right? When is that going to happen? And also, take a look at the team in their own division, the Steelers. It's been even worse for them because, yeah, they make the playoffs every year, but they don't win anything in the playoffs. They just get to the playoffs, and then they lose to a superior opponent. And this year it was the Ravens. So, and it is amazing because, I'm a Giant fan, right? I would take John Harbaugh, I would take Mike Tomlin in a heartbeat if they were available. Now, I hope Brian Daboll has a great year. I really do. I like Daboll, and I want to see him succeed. But if, you have an opportunity to get one of these guys, you pick up that phone immediately. There is no second thought. You pick up the phone and you say, hey, I want you to coach my team. And my dog agrees. So, yeah, I get it from the fan base's perspective. That, look, they want to see this team go further. But then there's also this other argument that comes into play. What would be the alternative then? Who are the Ravens going to bring in? Who are the Steelers going to bring in that is going to be better than what you currently have? Mike McDonald with the Ravens, he's now with the Seahawks. So I don't know, what they have in the coaching staff. Would you promote who you have on the coaching staff to be head coach? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I don't think. Unless you're like, hey, let's bring in Bill Belichick, stealing from North Carolina. I don't really think there's anybody out there that you could bring in and say they're going to do a better job right now. Unless, someone brings a name to the table that, maybe I'm not saying and says this is the guy that would be a better option. John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, they shouldn't be losing their jobs unless you have a strong alternative. That's just how I look at it. So I do like this extension for the Ravens because, again, what would the alternative be? The Ravens are a good team, a very good team. It's just we're in this weird era right now. They haven't been able to take that next step and knock off that team in the Kansas City Chiefs. And then they haven't been able to knock off the Bills in the playoffs most recently. They've had to play them in Buffalo. The pecking order is the Chiefs, then the Bills, and then the Ravens. And against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, and, not Joe Burrow. Didn't play Joe Burrow because he wasn't playing in that game, Lamar. He's 0-3 against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. So, and Lamar Jackson, he's at fault. He didn't play well in the championship game against the Chiefs, and he didn't play well in the first half against the Bills. And had he played better, if he didn't turn the ball over, that could have made the difference. But that didn't happen. So I think there's a lot more blame to go around than just John Harbaugh. But yeah, I think the extension is good. I'm good with it. What do you guys think though about the extension for John Harbaugh? Do you like it? Do you think the Ravens should have just let 2025 play out? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That's GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we're going to talk some baseball. We are going to talk about Jurickson Profar being suspended for 80 games, and just talk about the Braves and the start that they've gotten off to. Right now, they have the worst record in baseball, really. One of the worst records in baseball. I have to make sure, go and fact check and make sure it is the worst one. But yeah, they haven't won a game yet. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the future of Brian Snitker, their manager, as well. So a few things to talk about the Braves when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Braves. We're going to talk about a few things. The main thing was talking about Jurickson Profar. He was suspended for 80 games for PED use. But yeah, we'll also get into the Braves' tough start to the season, and also talk about the possible or the future of their manager, Brian Snitker. So the Braves actually do have the worst record in baseball. Now, I know it's early on, but they have the worst record in baseball. They are the only team right now that has not won a game yet. They are 0-6, and it doesn't help that their first two series they have played against the Padres and the Dodgers, and both of those teams are still currently undefeated. The Dodgers are 7-0, and the Padres are 6-0. So, good start for both of those teams. And also, quick thing on the Padres, they signed Jackson Merrill to a contract extension. We will talk about that towards the end of the segment here. But let's get into what happened with Jurickson Profar. So, Profar actually signed with the Braves, late in the offseason, pretty late. The Braves obviously dealing with some injuries to start the year, waiting on Ronald Acuna to come back. But, bringing in Profar, who had a very good year with the Padres last year. They brought him in to be, another productive bat in the order. And he is, he's going to be out for a while. Now, even with him being able to come back after the suspension, he can't play in the postseason if the Braves qualify. But yeah, so tested positive for HCG, which is a banned substance, and so he wouldn't be able to play in the postseason, and he signed a 3-year, $42 million deal with the Braves this offseason after a very good year in 2024. He batted .280, 24 homers, and .839 OPS. He was an All-Star, won a Silver Slugger with the Padres. So yeah, he is he was a good acquisition, but now he's out. He's out for a while. So and still waiting on Acuna to come back. Like I said, you still got Michael Harris. You got Jared Kelenic. They brought in Brian De La Cruz. They also did sign Alex Verdugo, so he's probably going to play a role on this team more. They brought him in late as well on a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. Now, a couple of other players got suspended too. He was the first player suspended for PEDs in 2025, and he follows a couple of players that got suspended last year. Yeah, no, it's not a good look. It's not a good look when you get caught, doing it. But I know there was a statement that was released, and let me see if I thought I had the statement that was issued in my notes. I guess I don't. I'll have to look it up quickly. But yeah, the Braves, like I said, they have been going through it. It has not been a good start for them. And this is a team I picked to win the NL East. I had them winning the NL East. I thought they could bounce back from it. Bounce back from the injuries last season. And so far, it hasn't looked good. Now, we've seen teams get off to bad starts, but then they turn it around. I mean, look at the Astros last year. They were well under 500 for a long time, and then they, went on a run, and they made the postseason. I know they got knocked out pretty quickly, but they still made the postseason. So, not time to panic yet. And also, like I said, they played against the Padres and the Dodgers. Both of those teams are currently still undefeated. So in a statement, the Braves said, "We were surprised and extremely disappointed to learn that Jurickson Profar tested positive for a performance-enhancing substance in violation of Major League Baseball's Joint Prevention and Treatment Program. We fully support the program and are hopeful that Jurickson will learn from this experience." Now, this is a statement from Profar. "Today is the most difficult day of my baseball career. Apologize to the Braves organization, his teammates, and fans. It is because of my deep love and respect for this game that I would never knowingly do anything to cheat it. I have been tested my entire career, including 8 times last season alone, and I've never tested positive. I would never willingly take a banned substance, but I take full responsibility and accept MLB's decision." Now, I really don't know much about Jurickson Profar. I know of him as a player, obviously, but off the field, not so much. So I don't know what his intentions could have been. Obviously the statement tells us one thing. His true intentions maybe could have told us another. Maybe he did know this. I don't know. Sometimes it happens where you don't knowingly know that you're taking a banned substance. It's not a good look for him. But, this hurts the Braves, already, with the bad start and now this, you don't want this to continue to unravel for the team. But I did also want to bring up their manager. So, Brian Snitker said, "I'll let this year play out, or I'll let this year get underway and see what happens." So, it hasn't really, made it official, but or it's not a guarantee, but, it's possible that maybe he doesn't come back at all next year, and then the Braves are looking for a new manager. He has a .735 and .585 record over 9 seasons with the Braves. They won the World Series back in 2021. He's had 7 straight winning seasons, 6 consecutive NL East titles, and that was from 2018 to 2023. He's the 3rd winningest manager in Braves history behind Bobby Cox and Frank Selly. So, it's possible he could retire and they have to look for somebody else. But, the Braves, let's kind of take a look at, where they kind of stack up amongst teams. So, you go to the team totals right now. You go to ERA. And the Braves right now are 25th in team ERA. They have currently a 4.88 ERA. You look at, the wins, they're nowhere to be found because nobody's picked up a win for them. You look at walks, hits per inning, which is WHIP. They're currently, where are they currently? Are they even on here? Yeah, they are on here. Right? They're 21st. They got a 1.35 WHIP, their pitchers. Opponent's batting average. Batters are hitting .258 against them this year. But 0-6. Not looking great. And right now they're playing the Dodgers. Tonight they got Bryce Elder pitching against Blake Snell. And Blake Snell had a pretty good debut. I picked up his first win. Dodgers just don't lose. They never. They will lose at some point, but hasn't happened yet. So hopefully, the Braves maybe pick up a win at some point, get themselves going. But, we're early on in the season here. But, yeah, this can continue to spiral. And you kind of look at how the lineup is shaping out so far. Austin Riley's batting .091. Michael Harris is batting .130. Matt Olson's batting .167. Marcell Ozuna, .214. Ozzie Albies, .136. Jared Kelenic, .158. Yeah, these batting averages are not good. So the offense is also not producing as well. Got to wake up. They got to wake up. We'll see what happens tonight. But looking around the league in baseball, so the Angels actually are off to a 4-1 start. They're 9-7. They picked up another win last night in extra innings. The Giants are 4-1. Padres won again last night. They're 6-0. We talked about that. The Cubs picked up a 7-4 victory over the A's. The Tigers, now that they're done playing with the Dodgers, they've won 2 straight. They beat the Mariners last night. Mariners continue to just not hit. The Brewers picked up the first win of the year, 5-0. So they that was big for them. Twins picked up their first win. They won 8-3 over the White Sox. The Blue Jays defeated the Nationals 5-3. They're off to a 4-2 start. Rays are off to a pretty good start, 4-1. They won 7-0 over the Pirates last night. Marlins, Sandy Alcantara picked up his first win. They defeated the Mets 4-2. The Rangers winning 1-0 over the Reds. Nathan Eovaldi pitched a shutout, so they improved to 4-2. And the Diamondbacks knocked off the Yankees last night 7-5. I, of course, was watching that game. The Yankees did have a lead in the later innings, so I was hoping the bullpen was able to lock it down. Tim Hill and Mark Leiter Jr. got themselves in a little bit of trouble that they couldn't get out of. And Gino Suarez of the Diamondbacks, I think, has homered in every single game this year, and I actually also have him in fantasy in one of my leagues. So that was a positive, I guess, to take out of it. He hit a go-ahead grand slam, and the Diamondbacks won 7-5. But there was a lot to like, though, in the loss for the Yankees last night with the young players. And, Will Warren pitched well. Jason Dominguez hit his first home run of the season. Ben Rice hit another home run. Anthony Volpe hit another home run. So, for all the people talking about the torpedo bats and how that's given the Yankees a huge advantage, well, guess what? They didn't win last night. They didn't win. So, they're not going undefeated this year because of the torpedo bats. Which I don't think anybody thought that, but still. Everybody's like, oh, the torpedo bats, give me a break. All right? Still got to be able to hit the ball. And the Diamondbacks hit the ball. Diamondbacks are a good team. They got really good pitching. Corbin Burns, his defense didn't really help him out last night. 2 unearned runs scored on a bad play at first base. So, the Yankees aren't the only team that can't, field the ball cleanly at first base. So, hey, it is what it is. Let's see what happens tonight. Looking around the league, I think everybody's playing tonight. So, Yankees continue their series with the Diamondbacks, Rangers and Reds. Paul Skeens pitches tonight, so if you want to check that out, if you have, obviously if you're a Pirates fan, you're going to be watching that, but if you have MLB.tv, tune in for that. Cole Reagans and Freddie Peralta in the Brewers Royal Series. Yusei Kikuchi and Sonny Gray. Twins and White Sox continue their series. Pablo Lopez against Sean Burke. Mackenzie Gore, let's see how he looks after his 13 strikeout performance against Easton Lucas. Will be starting for the Blue Jays. And, Tariq Skubal will be pitching again tonight for the Tigers. So hopefully, he has a bounce back from his 2025 debut against the Dodgers. But, I'm pretty sure every team is in action tonight. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Braves and their situation, what we talked about. Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we will talk about the top revenge games going into the 2025 season. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the best revenge games for 2025 in the NFL. And I forgot to mention Jackson Merrill's contract extension. So it's a 9-year, $135 million contract. Worth up to $204 million and includes an option for a 10th season. He's 21 years old. And, the Padres, they got ahead of the curve. They signed their young player before, he's able to reach the open market. And obviously the price would definitely be higher. And you see the prices are getting driven up in baseball, especially look at the contract that, Juan Soto got. So this was good. And it is interesting the Padres did this because there's all these concerns about are they going to be able to afford the team that they have because of everything that's gone on with ownership and, things like that. So, and they've gotten off to a great start. So, I think the Padres, are going to be able to keep this team around, and this team is going to be, seems going to be a dangerous team come October. So there's that. And also, forgot to mention this last, in the beginning of the show, because I didn't really go into it, but also Nikola Jokic, third 60-point triple-double in NBA history last night. And it did come in a loss, but we talked about Steph Curry, but I mean Jokic, what he's doing, and one of my friends just said in the chat, Jokic is crazy, man, and I would agree. So I apologize for not bringing that up because I was in bed by the time, that Timberwolves Nuggets game ended. So I was already talking. The Steph Curry performance already happened, so that's what we were opening up with. But yeah, I mean, he has my vote for MVP. But it might be going to Shea. So let's talk about these revenge games. So most of them are going to be from the playoffs. Right, so I think the number one revenge game for next year in the NFL is obviously, the Chiefs going up against the Eagles next year. And, it's because the Chiefs, they got run over in the Super Bowl. They got dominated. They got embarrassed in the Super Bowl by the Eagles. And, we talked about that a lot on the football podcast. I definitely watching that game, it was like, it was similar to, in a way, but I mean, we did see Mahomes get embarrassed in the Super Bowl before, but it was kind of similar to, how I was watching, the Broncos-Seahawks game. I was like, wow, I mean, Peyton's getting embarrassed. Team with Peyton Manning is getting embarrassed. And a team with Patrick Mahomes got embarrassed. I mean, the way they did, that was worse than the Bucs Super Bowl. That was. And you could make the argument that was worse than, what happened with Peyton Manning and the Broncos against Legion of Boom. But it's not like the Chiefs had a record-setting offense. But, they were going for a three-peat. But, this is the biggest revenge game. Because the Chiefs, they are going to be sitting on this loss. They're going to continue to sit on this loss for a long time. And, when they go up against the Eagles, they're going to want to bring it to them and get revenge. I'm sure they're going to want to do that. Now, I don't know if this game, I think this game is going to be. This game's going to be an Arrowhead. This game is going to be an Arrowhead because I know they did play in the regular season in 2023. That was an Arrowhead, but if you go back to when they played the previous time in the regular season, that was at Lincoln Financial Field. That was Hurts' first full year as a starter. It's going to be an Arrowhead this time around. So you do have home field advantage. But, hey, the Eagles won an Arrowhead the last time they played. So there's no guarantee the Chiefs would win that game. But you got that one. You got the championship game. The championship game rematches, with the Bills and the Bills and the Chiefs, and then, of course, the Commanders against the Eagles. The Bills, they beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but they fell short in the championship game. And, we talked about the Ravens and how they're not able to get over the hump. Well, the Bills it's the same thing. They basically lose to the Chiefs every single time they make it to the playoffs. They did lose to the Bengals that one year in the Josh Allen era. Well, they did also lose to Deshaun Watson and the Texans. That game actually was on NFL Network the other day. How times have changed since that game was played. But, yeah, that's another one. But the thing is, the Bills own the Chiefs in the regular season. The only time the Bills have lost to the Chiefs in the regular season, I think, was during the COVID season. Other than that, Josh Allen has knocked off Patrick Mahomes every single time. So, when the Bills get revenge? When they knock off the Chiefs in the playoffs. That's when they really get revenge. That's when they will get revenge. So, yeah, if you knock them off in the regular season, okay. But knock them off in the postseason. Commanders, it's a little different. We didn't expect them to get that far in the playoffs. We did not. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs. I didn't expect them to win a lot of games. They made it all the way to the championship game. And you know what? If it wasn't for turnovers, that game would have been closer. And, they split with the Eagles. They're going to be an even better team in 2025. They're going to give the Eagles a hard time. They've given the Eagles a hard time in years past. The year before, they were close games. And that was when the Commanders were bad. So now, 2024 comes around, they split. I think the Eagles maybe would have swept had Jalen Hurts not gotten hurt. But this Commanders team now, in year 2, with this system, with Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, you went out and you got Deebo Samuel, you traded for Laramie Tunsil. The offense is going to be better. You would think the defense is going to get better. We haven't gotten to the draft yet. Commanders have a strong draft. That only makes them better. So, they're going to want to bring it to the Eagles as well. So you got those playoff match. And you also got the Bills and the Ravens. They'll be going at it. Mark Andrews drops that pass in the end zone. That was the 2-point conversion. That could have led, to maybe a different result. That didn't happen. Ravens also just turned the ball over constantly in the game. I think they had, 4 turnovers? They had 2 in the second half. Or no. I think it might have just been the one with Mark Andrews. So they had 3. Yeah, the 2 by Lamar Jackson. The fumble and the pick. And then you also had the Mark Andrews fumble. And the Ravens, they beat the Bills in the regular season. Derrick Henry had almost 200 yards rushing. But that's one that, you get to see, the top 2 quarterbacks go at it again. At least in terms of the MVP voting. Josh Allen won the MVP. Lamar Jackson got first team All-Pro. So who says no to that? Of course, we got the Chiefs and the Ravens. They played each other way back in the beginning of last year to open up the season. Isaiah Likely, his foot was just out of bounds, and had he caught that, who knows what happens. Do the Ravens succeed on the 2-point conversion, and then, that starts a ripple effect. I don't know, but we will see Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson match up once again. You got new faces, you got old faces in new places. I mean, DK Metcalf will be going up against the Seahawks at some point. Seahawks and the Steelers will play against each other. Cooper Kupp going up against his former team twice a year. DeMarcus Lawrence will be going up against the Cowboys. That'll be interesting just because, of the back and forth he had with Micah Parsons. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, I mean, they play the Jets and the Packers. So that's going to be up there too. That's when Aaron Rodgers goes up against too bad he's not going back to Lambeau though. If he signs with the Steelers, the Packers are coming to Pittsburgh to play him. So, and I would love to go to that game. But the biggest revenge games come from, the playoffs from last year. So, Aaron Rodgers could be added to the list, right? He definitely can. And, Art Rooney, he recently spoke on Aaron Rodgers and said it's heading in the right direction. So I'm assuming we're going to get a deal at some point. I mean, I don't think Rodgers would be working out with DK Metcalf and throwing him passes if he was thinking about if he was going to retire. But again, I could be very off base with that. So, but let me know what you guys think though about the biggest revenge games. What's a revenge game? I'd like to see the Giants get revenge on all the teams in their division. That would be nice. Because they didn't win one divisional game last year. They went 0-6 against their division. And it would not surprise me if that continues. So, there's nobody's high on the Giants going into the year. And honestly, that might be a good thing. Because the Giants usually do well when they are doubted. But I would like to see the Giants get revenge on all the teams in their division and, maybe put up a respectable season. But it's going to be very tough to do so. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the top revenge games. I think also you could throw the Packers going up against their divisional opponents because they only won one divisional game last year. They lost to the Lions twice, they lost to the Vikings, and they lost to the Bears in the final game of the regular season. Now, the Vikings are going to look a little bit different at quarterback. There's going to be no more Sam Darnold. You could talk about, there's always divisional revenge games are a given because, they play each other twice a year. So, but just thought I'd, bring this into a segment here. So, that is pretty much it with that topic. But like I said, let me know what you guys think about, the revenge games for next year. What's the one you were most excited for? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Houston Texans. We will do a season overview on their 2024 campaign. I know it says 2025, but 2024, 2025 recap. We'll get into that. We'll discuss it. And, actually, while we're here, I guess I'll just, change that to a 4. There we go. We're all good. Okay. Little typo there. But, because that would just annoy me. But that is what we will do when we come back from our final break of the show. Go over the Houston Texans season and what they've done in the offseason. And what moves have they made and what they could potentially do with their first draft pick. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Houston Texans. And, what kind of season they had, what they did in the offseason so far, get into all that good stuff. So they once again won the AFC South. I thought they were going to be a lot better. I thought they were a little bit disappointing. Their defense was not defensively. Defensively, they have a strong unit, and Derek Stingley, very good player, in the secondary, and he got paid in the offseason. And Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, they have a solid unit on defense, but I was definitely expecting more from their offense. I was really expecting them to take a big jump in year 2. I thought C.J. Stroud would have a better year than he did his rookie season. I actually picked him to win MVP. I tried to, pick somebody else other than Josh Allen, which, if I would have just picked Josh Allen, I would have been right on that. But, I tried to be a little different. And, that ended up not happening. C.J. Stroud was kind of a mixed bag. There was a little bit of regression. I remember before the season started, my friend and I, were having a conversation about the Texans, and, he said that he expected a regression from C.J. Stroud. So he was right when it came to that. But looking at the Texans season, so they finished 10-7. They were the number 4 seed in the AFC. They did win a playoff game, though. We did talk about the Colts yesterday. From the Texans' perspective now, they knocked off the Colts 29-27. Stroud, had a couple of touchdowns. Joe Mixon. They picked up Joe Mixon. They traded for him from the Bengals, and then they also got Stephon Diggs, who had a couple of touchdowns in the game. Mixon had 159 yards rushing and a touchdown. So the Texans got off to a good start. Then they went up against the Bears. The offense kind of struggled in that game. Both teams ended up scoring 3 points each in the second half. Joe Mixon actually ended up getting hurt in the game and missed some time. Texans only ran the ball for 75 yards on the ground. Nico Collins had a big game, had 135 yards receiving and a touchdown. So the Texans got off to a 2-0 start. And you're thinking, all right, so far so good for them. But then this was a true test for them. They go up against the Minnesota Vikings at their stadium. This was an away game. And you thought, all right, let's see what the Texans are made of here. And they got, from start to finish, they got destroyed. 34-7. Game was never close. C.J. Stroud, a couple of turnovers in the game. Texans ran the ball for only 38 yards. Stephon Diggs against his former team only had 94 yards receiving. It was not a good day. It's not a good day for the Texans against the Vikings. Actually, the Texans had more total yards than the Vikings in the game, but still, it was never close. So then I was kind of like, all right, I guess maybe the Texans aren't as good as we think, and the Vikings, of course, went on to win 14 games. But then they proceeded to get back on the right track. They won their next 3 games. They beat the Jaguars. They beat the Bills in a close game. And then they beat up on the Patriots. They got Joe Mixon back, and he had 2 touchdowns. He had a receiving and a rushing. Stephon Diggs had a touchdown. Tank Dell had a touchdown. Nico Collins actually, I failed to mention, got hurt. Not in this game, but I think he got hurt after the Bears game, so he missed some time. C.J. Stroud 3 touchdowns, and this was in Drake May's debut. So at that point, the Texans are 5-1, but then on the road against the Packers, C.J. Stroud only had 86 yards passing, and despite that, they still could have won that game, but Brandon McManus kicked the game-winning field goal, so they dropped to 5-2. But then they beat the Colts to improve to 6-2. They proceeded to lose their next 2 games. They lost that ugly game against the Jets. Stroud went 11-30, 191 yards. The offensive line was not great in that game. But yeah, the Texans for some reason have a problem with the Jets. And then they had a big lead against the Lions, right? They were up, 23-7 at the half. Jared Goff had 5 interceptions in the game, and they let the Lions come back and win the game. Jake Bates kicked those 250-plus yard field goals. They lose, and Stroud had a couple of interceptions. The Texans really couldn't run the ball against the Lions. They only had 56 yards on the ground. John Mechie actually was their leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 74 yards. But yeah, I mean, they were missing Diggs because Diggs ended up tearing his ACL, unfortunately, and they still were missing Nico Collins. I think when did Diggs tear his ACL? Was it? I think it was against the Colts, I believe. He tore his ACL. So yeah, no Diggs, no Nico Collins. However, they did bounce back. They beat up on the Cowboys. Joe Mixon had a big day. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, and they won 34-10. But then they got upset by the Titans, which was odd. So yeah, they lost 32-27 there, but then they won against the Jaguars. So they were 8-5. And still, they did not. Actually, no, they did have Nico Collins. They got Nico Collins back at this point. I think they got him back. Did they get him back for the Cowboys game? Or was it the following week? They did. So they did get him back for the Cowboys game. Yeah, because he had a touchdown, I think, to start off the game, and then it got called back. I think that's what happened. But, yeah, so the Texans went into the bye week. They were 8-5, but, I mean, there was never really a point where you thought, oh, man, they're going to lose out in the division because all the other teams were, I mean, you got the Jaguars, the Titans, the Colts. They never really had a chance, even though they ended up, finishing 2 games behind the Texans. So then they came out of the bye, and this was, the tough part of the schedule. You had the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. They did beat the Dolphins. Derek Stingley had the game-sealing interception. Tua threw 3 interceptions, so that kind of helped the Texans out. Dolphins' defense kept it close. But then you had the game against the Chiefs. And you know what? I thought the Texans, hung in there. Stroud did throw a couple of picks, but this was the game where Tank Dell had that horrific knee injury. He scored the touchdown, but, tore up his knee and probably not going to play in 2025 either. But, yeah, that was – and, you had the shots of C.J. Stroud being emotional about it. It was a tough scene there. It really was. But they ended up losing that game 27-19 to go to 9-6. And then they got destroyed on Christmas against the Ravens, 31-2. C.J. Stroud went 17-31 for 185 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. But they did beat the Titans in the final game of the regular season. And then, against the Chargers, they had a good team win. I mean, the defense picked off Justin Herbert 4 times. They got after him. It wasn't looking good early on. But, Stroud had that play where, it was a bobbled snap, picked the ball up and, completed the pass. I think it was to either Xavier Hutchinson or Nico Collins, but that was like the momentum shifter. And the Texans never looked back. They won 32-20. And then they went up against the Chiefs in the divisional round. They ended up losing that. Stroud got sacked 8 times. The offensive line did not do a good job of protecting him. They could have won that game. They definitely could have. But, again, offensive line failed to protect them. They ran the ball well, the Texans, as a team. But, again, they were not beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead. That was just not going to happen. So they got knocked out. So they got knocked out in the division round. They won a playoff game. So C.J. Stroud does have 2 playoff wins to his resume. You want to see them do more. And you look at, the stats for the Texans. So Stroud in the regular season, 20 touchdowns to 12 picks, 3,700 yards passing. You want to see the touchdowns go up next season. They did not bring back Stephon Diggs, so you're going to have Nico Collins. And, they did actually, they got Christian Kirk over from the Jaguars in division trade, so we'll see how that pans out. But Joe Mixon ran the ball effectively when he was on the field, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. Nico Collins had over 1,000 yards despite missing some time. He had 7 touchdowns on the season. I think had Diggs not gotten hurt, I feel like the Texans maybe could have brought him back, but I guess they didn't want to. And then looking at the defensive side of the ball, you had Daniil Hunter with 12 sacks, Will Anderson with 11 sacks. They have a solid unit. And then Derek Singley had 5 interceptions along with Kalen Bullock. He had 5. Lassiter had 3. Jimmy Ward had 2. But like I said, Texans, they had a solid unit defensively. Now, they traded Laramie Tunsil, which was a head-scratcher for a lot of people because, the offensive line was not very good. Why do you go and trade your best offensive lineman? I don't know. But they signed Cam Robinson, who is basically going to replace Laramie Tunsil. They signed Mario Edwards Jr., Lakin Tomlinson, signed for the offensive line Tremont Smith, the corner, signed a linebacker, MJ Stewart, a safety. They brought back Derek Barnett. They signed Darrell Taylor, another defensive end. They brought in Braxton Berrios. They signed Justin Watson. They brought back Derry Ugunbowale. Re-signed Sheldon Rankins for the defensive line. So, I could see the Texans going offensive line in the draft, maybe. You could definitely see them maybe drafting a receiver at some point. Yeah, I don't know. Right now, when I look at Tankathon, they're projected to draft Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. So, yeah, I think that's probably where they go, is offensive line. But, we'll see. We'll see. But looking at, their offensive and defensive stats, so offensively, they were kind of a middle-of-the-pack offense. They were 18th in points per game, 22nd in total offense yards, points per game. Yeah, we just said that. They ranked 23rd in team run blocking. They ranked 20th in EPA per play when using motion. They ranked 25th in yards per game, or yards per play, and 28th in successful play rate. And then defensively, 14th in points allowed per game, 6th in total yards allowed per game, and 6th in passing yards allowed per game. So, this again, defense was pretty good. 4th in sacks, 2nd in interceptions. So, they were 11th in rushing yards against per game. So, they got to improve this offense. If this offense can take that next step, this could be one of the elite teams in the AFC. And that's what I was kind of hoping for last year, but that just didn't happen. So, but that's where the Texans are at. Right now, I look at them as still the division favorites. Jacksonville is in rebuild. Tennessee, I don't really expect them to be a good team next year, even, with drafting a young quarterback. They're still ways away, even though they still have a good defense, but young quarterback, there's going to be some growing pains there. The Colts, again, the Texans are the best team right now. So that's kind of where we're at with the AFC South. And with that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to our videos and our YouTube channels, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts to listen to us on the go. And, yeah, again, thank you guys for tuning in. We greatly appreciate you guys. All right. We greatly appreciate you guys' support. That's what I was trying to say. So, yeah, as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.